What's going on YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. I do hope you guys are doing well. Welcome to another DDO video. Now I've been playing this game for a little while now and I have made my fair share of mistakes that inevitably you are going to make, but hopefully I can make some of them in this video slightly less painful and allow you to avoid, retreading the same steps that I did. So in no real order, what I want to do is break down some pain points that I certainly went through when trying to struggle through the early parts, the early learning curve of this game, and ultimately, hopefully this will allow you to have a much better experience. Although I will say, outside of this, you are still going to make some mistakes. It's an experience, it's a learning curve, but hopefully this helps. The first mistake that I personally made was downloading the game solely on Steam. Now, whilst you might say, Josh, why does that make a difference? It's just a game, we're just downloading it. For some reason, the Steam version of the client, the launcher you download, can sometimes miss files, it can sometimes not launch correctly, it tends to corrupt a lot more than the actual standalone client does. So, don't run that risk. Just download the launcher itself from the website and play that way. Now, the reason why I have both is because I like buying things through my Steam wallet if I've got some balance left on there, but really predominantly I just play on the actual standalone Dungeons & Dragons online client, and on that client I have rarely had any issues at all. So yeah, just make your life a little bit easier. I'm not saying it will happen, but there's been plenty of times I've logged into Steam or tried to boot the Steam version up and something has just gone wrong. It's pretty cool being able to track your hours, on Steam, but really just play it safe. So next up, I feel like the most common mistake when you are brand new to the game is probably going to happen at this point. When you are ultimately making your character, you're stepping into DDO for the first time, you are presented with a metric fuck ton of options through melee classes, through ranged classes, spellcasters, rogues, trappers, everything. And even if you can climb over that molehill and you decide on a class, you've then got this. You've got paths to choose from. Now, what this does, and the ideology behind this is, SSG, or Turbine, whenever this was put in at the time, they had basically placed in predetermined paths that get you into the action sooner. So this allows you to kind of switch your brain off and just give you a semi-reliable, semi-decent build that you can start off early game. The issue is these haven't been updated in a very long time. So I would actually argue even if you get to level 15, maybe onwards, you will see these drop off quite a lot. And there is no real customizability with them at all. Everything is predetermined from the feats you get and everything in between. You always, and categorically behind me here, if I move my bald ass head, you always want to click customize. This will allow you to, of course, customize what your character earns, with each level. If they're able to get a feat, if they're able to increase certain skills, you are in control of that. Whereas these preset options here, you are not. So I would advise to just kind of stay away from them a little bit. To further flesh out some of the pain points that you might find when you are on the character creation process, you'll notice down here, it says the solo ability difficulty. So what it's saying to you is, this class, if you pick it, this is how difficult soloing the game is going to be. And well, as much as many people probably won't pay an awful lot of attention to this, there are some people that will look at this, for example, with the Warlock, and go, that says fair, but yet, if I go to, where is it? If I go to Melee and go down to Class, I can see here, oh, the Paladin is very, very good. Maybe I should pick a Paladin instead of a Warlock because I'm going to have an easier time. Well, that's just kind of not really the case because the Warlock is my highest level character in the game, and there is not many things that I have stumbled across on my Warlock that has really created a wall, a barrier to my progress. In fact, the Warlock, if you build it correctly, and I'm by no means a master at this, I've actually followed a lot of builds from way more experienced players, but the Warlock will demolish a lot of things very, very easily. So my message to you is just do a little bit of research, figure out what build works, what is technically viable solo. A lot of the classes in the game are. There are some that are harder than others, but just don't follow the difficulty check here too intricately. Kind of do a bit of research and see what actually works. Because I promise you, a lot of the classes that are marked as difficult or moderately hard will actually kind of beeline through a lot of the content as well. Now, quite clearly, we're going to be spending a lot of time in the character creation screen here, so I'll try not to drag this out too much. But one thing I do just want to say, and I am by no means an expert in all the races of this game. There are people out there that are far more qualified than me. But one big mistake I made when I first started this game is not making things simple for myself. I love class fantasy. I love race fantasy. I love picking elves, and I've always kind of enjoyed the high elf class, wood elf class, like out of Lord of the Rings. And the reality is, a lot of your race choices, as you can see here, if we go into more info, have certain negative and positive connotations to them and negative and positive effects. Now, in order to simplify this, you can just pick human. Humans are pretty much the vanilla ice cream of DDO. They are not so much fantastic at things, although actually they are fantastic because they have access to an extra feat when you level up, especially when you first start off. But they're also obviously not bad at everything. There were a couple of times when I first started out, after I started leveling up for a little while, that I physically got to a point where my race was actually detrimental to the build that I was actually trying to achieve, which was really, really annoying. So I would say that if you're just kind of getting used to the game, you're just trying to find your footing in it, pick human because you'll have a much better time. I know humans are very boring. We are boring people in terms of the actual existence. I get that, and it's not the most fantastical thing to play, but it is safe. You can't really go wrong with a human in DDO, in my opinion. I do personally really wish that on this screen right here, there was big, bold red text that says, this is really, really important, and this can make or break your build. If you allocate these skill points the wrong way, or just maybe don't allocate enough in certain areas, your class effectively will just feel like it's doing nothing. You'll either be really squishy, you'll either be not doing enough damage, and there is a real emphasis on getting this right. I know not everyone wants to dig into the wiki straight away or wants to look at builds, but I would at this point really do myself a favor. Well, after I've selected my class, I would find some dedicated DDO builds or a DDO builder, which we've got access to, which I can link in the description, and just see what works. You don't want to waste these points. These points are fairly stringent. The only way you can really get more is, of course, either by leveling up or by getting increases through armor or weapons, trinkets, that sort of thing. But early on, this is really going to determine your output on damage, how tanky you are, how resistant you are, how effective you are at checks, so on and so forth. One thing I just want to touch on before we move away from the character selection and creation screen, at the end of your creation, you will get asked what alignment you want to go down, whether it be good, neutral, bad, chaotic neutral, lawful good, so on and so forth. And whilst some classes will be restricted to certain alignments, like a paladin can only be good, for example, there are multiple options that you can choose from, and not all of them are particularly fantastic. What I would recommend, and this has been recommended to me, is selecting neutral across the board unless you have a very specific build or reason in mind. If you are to take lawful good, or if you are to take chaotic evil, for example, you can find yourself being very susceptible to more damage and more negative effects when being attacked with the opposite alignment, either holy or negative spells, and it also restricts what weapons you are able to use and what negative or positive effects you receive from them. I believe also there are certain elements of certain class levels that you aren't able to take if you are a certain negative or positive alignment, so just bear that in mind. Just play it incredibly safe unless you have a determined build in mind, and make sure you select neutral. Next up, now that we're actually in the game, this one's going to be a little bit more niche, but it does apply to a lot of classes across the board. Whilst SSG have done a fantastic job with updating the game and trying to keep it as modern and refreshed as possible, there are certain few skills and a certain few tooltips that really suffer. Take, for example, this Ursa's Heart on my Nature's Protector tree. So now I'm playing a bear druid on this character, and I typically am a two-handed fighter. You can see here I've got a falchion, which is two-handed, and as I'm working my way up this skill tree, it recommends or highlights certain abilities you can take, and you'll see here on the tooltip that I can only benefit from this skill if I have bear form, which we've got, and a shield equipped, which I don't have. Now, what this does is it gives me a 25% competence bonus to max hit points. So with quite a few points in that, you can see it makes, as I come out of this, it makes quite a difference to my hit points here. You know, that's whatever, 339 to 492, so quite a big difference. So you don't really want to miss out on that ideally. Well, what's happened is the tooltip has not been changed, but the skill has. So providing you got medium armor or less on, you don't have to have a shield. You can still just benefit from this either way. So just be mindful. If there are certain skills you're not sure about, then just do a bit of research. Go onto the wiki and have a look, because you could really be doing yourself a disservice and losing out on vital points and vital build viability. Now, within DDO itself, if you are a first-time player, if you've never really stepped foot into the game at all before, you have 3 versions of accounts in this game. You have free-to-play, so you've never spent a penny, you've just downloaded the game. You have premium, which is someone who has at least bare minimum purchased something in the game or gone VIP before but let it lapse. And then you have full VIP, which are paid subscribers. If you are free to play, but you are finding yourself playing quite extensively, but you don't want to pay, you are, of course, more than welcome to do that, and it is viable to an extent. But what you will find is you will have a platinum cap if you are a free to play player. Now, the only way you can lift this cap, which is the currency cap, is by purchasing something and becoming a premium account, which lifts the restrictions, and it can just be the cheapest thing in the DDO store. Going premium will also lift any restrictions on chat, and also open up the amount of items that you can post on the auction house. So it can be quite useful to do if you are considering playing this game for the long term. Now, let's say, for example, you want to remain free to play, but you are, running out of content to do, then, there's a couple of things that you just need to bear in mind. And I just want to preface here. A majority of the content in the game, outside of the most recent and paid expansions that you see on the DDO website, can be bought using DDO points. Now, you can go into the store here, and you can spend them on adventure packs. You can't see many on my account because I'm a VIP, but there are some that start as low as like 90, 95 DDO points and scale all the way up. Now, the way you acquire these DDO points is by earning set amounts of favor across your account. It's normally, I believe, 50 to 100 favor. You get something like 25 DDO points. And if you've got access to the monster manuals, which are down here, some of these, being this one here, for example, Bat Exterminator 2, will give you 15 DDO points. Now, what you can do is you can accumulate these and use them to buy more content in the game. So I guess another mistake that a lot of people come into the game and just assume is that the game is inherently pay to win or pay to play. Now, it does include a grind, but categorically, you can play this game free to play for as long as you want to. Now, the reason why I've mentioned content and free to play here is what leads into my next mistake. Now, the developers SSG are very, very generous with DDO, and a lot of this flies under the radar. Quite often, year to year, they will release a free content coupon, which will give you access to a majority of the adventure packs within the game. Now, the reason why I say this is a mistake is because what I've just referenced about spending your DDO points on content packs could also be incorrect advice or the incorrect thing to do. Sometimes it is worth just waiting and seeing what they're going to release. It's normally around this sort of time towards the end of the year that they'll release a coupon code, and it will allow you to use your DDO points for other things that you might want to do. If I'm being honest, if you're a new player, I would personally recommend playing the game free to play for at least a week, 2 weeks, see how you feel. If you're really invested, then maybe go to premium by, spending a little something in the DDO store and seeing what gets released or what goes on sale, because outside of the adventure packs as well, a lot of the major content, the major expansions go on really heavy discounted sales too that you can pick up. So I guess to further my point, be patient when it comes to paying for things, or at least entering the game with a mindset that you've got to spend something. Just be mindful that you don't. You can play this game free to play. You can get a ton of enjoyment out of it, which I know quite a few people that do and have played free to play for a long time. But if you are invested, then of course you can spend a little. The VIP sub, for example, which is about £8.99 here in the UK, will open up pretty much all of the content packs outside of the expansions that you can then play through. And it is hours upon hours, hundreds, thousands of hours of content before you ever need to spend any more. And you know what, even if you buy it for 1 month, you can then cancel it straight afterwards. So moving on, in DDO, you'll get a lot of items, a lot of pieces of equipment, some better than others, some worse, but not all of it is worth throwing away. For example, this ring right here, you get incredibly early on, and you can see here it has got an ability which allows you to water breathe. Now, even though I don't have this item on, I can drag it onto my action bar here and double click this to equip it and use it as and when I want to, which will allow me to water breathe. And you can do this with a lot of different items, a lot of different effects. This allows you to flesh out the viability of your character and your build a lot more for certain situations that otherwise you wouldn't really be set up for or prepared for. These clickable icons are also particularly handy if you are a character that switches between melee weapons and ranged weapons, or maybe if you like to use throwables to interact with certain levers. You can drag these items into your weapon sets right here, drag them onto your hotbar, and then as you click them, you will equip them. You can pretty much do this on the fly throughout combat, so there's no going into your inventory, having to find the weapon, and so on and so forth. You can just click on it and away you go. Next up, let's talk about spells. Now, spells by their very nature, if you ask me, are a fundamental, a core component of any high fantasy campaign, especially in Dungeons and Dragons, but these spells are no good to you if they are not prepared. Now, typically you'll have to go into a tavern or safe area to prepare your spells, and the way you do that is by going into your spell character sheet here and dragging them into these predetermined slots that you see just here. You can see here, if I then go down and drag, where is it, Thornstrike, onto this, it fills up the last slot and it's now become active in my bar. For example, if I then move it off, if I drag this down here, you can see the Thornstrike, take it off the bar, it goes grey. So without it being prepared, I physically cannot cast it. And the amount of times early on that I did not understand this is actually quite crippling, to be honest with you. Going into certain dungeons and having no spells equipped is kind of like having a sports car but having no fuel for it. You're not going to get anything done. So make sure that you've got multiple levels of your spells prepared. As you can see here, we've got sort of a full list going forward, and you'll have a much better time. Moving on then, quite a common mistake that I see new people make, including myself, is not getting a hireling, and specifically not getting a cleric or healing hireling, as these things, they make or break your solo experience. A hireling is essentially an NPC companion. It's just someone that comes with you on your dungeon travels, your journeys, your quests, and they can fight enemies, they can interact with objects. If you want to send them to interact with a lever because maybe there's a trap and you'd rather sacrifice them, you can do that. But more importantly, they can heal and later on resurrect you as well. So very important. There are hireling vendors which are scattered around quite a few of the different central hubs, and they don't really cost an awful lot, but they can make your life so much easier. There are even certain missions and dungeons that require you to interact with certain levers in a certain amount of time that are physically impossible to do on your own. And even if you prefer to play solo in general, I recommend taking one of these hirelings just to make your life a lot easier. They aren't the most intelligent. I'm going to be honest, they get stuck on a lot of things, they walk into a lot of traps, but at a fundamental level, they do make your life much simpler. Hireling vendors, you can find one straight away in the harbour. You can even find one on Korthos that will allow you to buy a level 1 variant. In the harbour, you've got access to, I think, level 3, level 4 hirelings, and then Stormreach is where things sort of open up a bit more. You've got them all the way up to level 20 if you want to, but you've only got to sort of have a walk around, get a lay of the land, and you'll be able to find them. Moving on now, I think it's important to talk about not underestimating the sheer powerhouse that is guilds and guild buffs. Now, guilds stereotypically in a lot of MMOs are purely just social hubs. They're just ways for people to interact with higher end content or just interact with each other. And whilst that is still true in DDO, a lot of people want to get into guilds because of this. You see all this chaos that is over the top here, and physically you cannot see even more because there's that many buffs. These are guild buffs. Now, with every guild, depending on what level it is, they'll have access to a whole plethora of buffs. As you can see, as I hover over them, they all do different things, from save enhancements to extra action boosts to XP bonuses, so on and so forth. In fact, I even hide it because there's that many. These buffs are astronomical, especially if you are a low level. They can really make your progression and your journey a lot easier. And people in this game understand that people want to join these guilds just for the buffs. In fact, there are often messages that are said in open world chat about joining guilds, come and join us for buffs, so on and so forth. And as long as you're contributing some of the guild renown to build those guilds up, they don't really mind. They'll allow you to stick around. But if you are having a hard time soloing, or a hard time just getting through some of the missions, or your resistances aren't quite high enough, try joining a well-established guild, not only for the friendly faces and the helping hand, but for those buffs, because they are vitally, vitally important. When you first start out in the game, you'll have access to 3 inventory bags, and that's pretty much all you've got. However, you can expand your inventory space, and you're going to want to do this fairly quickly. In fact, I made this mistake very early on of not really knowing what to do or where to go. You'll probably find yourself earning reputation with the coin lords and the free agents sort of fairly early on. And once you get the coin lords to a certain reputation cap, I believe it may even be 50 or even 100 in this case, you'll have access to another bag slot. And with each one of these different patrons, these different factions, if you like, they will offer certain rewards, even outside of bags, that are available to your character to collect through the mailing system, which is going to make your time a lot easier. So don't sleep on doing quests for certain factions, even if some of them are slightly under level. It's worth it to get the reputation, and of course with reputation gain and faction gain, you'll even get DDO points as well, so it's kind of a win-win. But definitely go through, do these quests, get yourself more bag space, because this fills up, even with 4, I've got 5 on my other character right now, these fill up incredibly quickly. The loot system in DDO, I personally enjoy. You get a lot of it. There's quite a lot of dopamine when you get a really cool weapon or piece of armor, but it does mean that you're picking up a lot of gems, a lot of materials, a lot of currency, so on and so forth. Once you've hit a certain favor cap, you'll be able to speak to these patrons, and these patrons here, obviously they're located in each different area. They will give you certain rewards for your time and for your investment into their cause. Now, I realize I should have mentioned this earlier when we were talking about prepping spells, but I guess we could just slot this in here. Some spells require some of these items here, which are called material components. Now, with each spell level, typically there is a material level too, and you will physically not be able to cast that spell unless you have one of these materials, or Omni Spell Dust, which is more of a VIP component. It's something that you get out of gold dice rolls or some of the collection boxes as well. It's always important to make sure you're stocked up on these. You really don't want to be caught out mid-dungeon if you need a certain spell, whether it be a buff, whether it be a high damaging spell, and you physically can't cast it because you've not got the materials. So just be mindful of that. So with that said, I will call it here for part 1 of the beginner mistakes, if you like, because there is quite a few to get through and way too many just for this video alone. If you enjoyed this sort of thing, then please do consider leaving a like and subscribing for more DDO content. I also cover Lord of the Rings online here too. If there is anything that I've missed out, which of course there is bound to be, then leave it down below in the comments and I'll include it in the next video. Above all else, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.